45 minutes felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Bianca counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3, as she waited in the shadowed alcove near the servants' stairs. The dark cloak Mari had given her smelled of lavender and smoke, too large across her shoulders, but anonymous enough to pass unnoticed in the lower city. Beneath it, she wore a simple traveling dress, the kind merchant daughters wore when inspecting shipments at the docks. Her fingers clutched the velvet pouch at her waist, heavy with every gold coin she'd managed to hide over the past 6 months. Her dowry, her father's investment, her currency for freedom. The estate clock tower chimed the quarter hour. Time. She moved quickly through the corridors she'd memorized since childhood, every creak in the floorboards catalogued in her memory, every blind corner where torchlight didn't reach. The western wing lay quiet. Most of the household staff were preparing for tomorrow's departure to the Council of Moons, the summit where Verelian's noble families would gather under the full moon to negotiate alliances, arrange marriages, and display their carefully constructed power. Where she was supposed to arrive, with a husband on her arm. The wine cellar doors appeared ahead, ancient oak reinforced with iron. Bianca slipped through them and descended into darkness that smelled of earth and fermented grapes. At the back wall, behind barrels marked with her grandfather's seal, a narrow gap led into older tunnels, smuggling routes from when housecal had been merchants first and nobles second. The tunnels were cold, the stones slick with moisture. Bianca kept one hand against the wall as she moved, counting her steps. 200 paces to the first junction, 300 more to the exit near the Ember Market Square. Her heart hammered against her ribs with every step. Jesse would be waiting. They would leave Verelian tonight, travel to the free territories beyond the Packlands, where noble bloodlines and alpha authority meant nothing. They would build something real, something chosen, something that belonged to them alone. Before we continue, please hit the subscribe and like button and tell me which city you're tuning in from. I love to know where this story found you. Now let's return to the moment everything changed. She emerged from the tunnels into an alley that reeked of fish and old straw. The Ember Market sprawled before her, a maze of torchlit stalls and taverns where merchants and commoners mixed freely after dark. Music drifted from open doorways. Laughter echoed off cobblestones. Bianca pulled her hood lower and moved toward the Black Griffin Tavern, where Jesse had promised to meet her. The tavern's windows glowed warm and golden. Through the thick glass, she could see shapes moving inside, hear the muffled roar of conversation. Her hand reached for the door handle and stopped, because she heard his laugh. Jesse's laugh, the one she knew better than her own heartbeat, was coming from the alley beside the tavern. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she nearly stumbled. He was here. He'd come. Everything would be. Once she pays me, Jesse's voice continued, still laughing, I'll be gone before sunrise. Let the merchant lord clean up his daughter's mess. Bianca's world stopped. You're sure she'll bring the full amount? Another man's voice, unfamiliar and rough. She's desperate enough to bring everything she has. Jesse again, casual, amused. Poor girl actually thinks I love her. Can you imagine? As if I'd throw away my future for some merchant's daughter playing at nobility. But her dowry will set me up nicely in the eastern territories. Maybe I'll even buy a title of my own. The velvet pouch suddenly felt like it weighed nothing at all, or perhaps everything. Bianca couldn't tell anymore. The world had become distant, muffled, as if she were underwater. She didn't remember deciding to move. Her body simply turned, stumbling away from the alley, away from Jessie's laughter, away from every promise that had ever made her believe she could be something other than a transaction. The market blurred around her. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only move blindly forward through crowds that parted around her, like she was already a ghost. She crashed into someone, hard chest, immovable, and coins spilled from her trembling hands, gold glinting against dark cobblestones. The word caught in her throat. She looked up. Golden eyes met hers, fierce, ancient, glowing faintly in the torchlight. The stranger didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her with an intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in her life. And Bianca Cal, daughter of House Cal, merchant noble heiress groomed for political alliance, did the most desperate thing she had ever done. "I need a +1 by tomorrow," she whispered, clutching the velvet pouch like a lifeline. "Someone willing to stand beside me at the Council of Moons and pretend they belong. I'll pay you. I'll pay you everything I have." The stranger's gaze moved from her face to the scattered coins, to the tears she hadn't realized were falling. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, dangerous in ways she didn't yet understand. "You don't need a +1, he said quietly. "You need protection." And somehow, impossibly, she believed him. Bianca waited for him to laugh, or worse, to walk away, leaving her kneeling in a puddle of spilled coins and shattered hopes. He did neither. Instead, the stranger crouched down with fluid grace and began gathering the gold pieces scattered across the cobblestones. His movements were precise, unhurried, as if they had all the time in the world, despite the chaos of the market swirling around them. When he placed the coins back into her trembling hands, his fingers were warm, calloused, steady. "Why do you need a +1? He asked quietly. Not "who are you" or "what's your name" or any of the questions she'd expected. Just why? Bianca's breath hitched. She counted silently, 1, 2, 3, trying to steady herself enough to speak. The truth felt too large, too complicated, too humiliating to explain to a stranger in an alley, while Jessie's laughter still echoed in her skull. "The Council of Moons," she managed finally, her voice raw. "It's a summit. Tomorrow night. All the noble families and pack leaders gather to—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "I'm expected to arrive with my future husband, to prove my family's worth. If I don't—" "You'll be humiliated publicly," he finished for her. No judgment in his tone, just understanding. Worse than humiliated. Bianca clutched the velvet pouch tighter. "My father's position is already fragile. House Cal has gold, but no pack protection, no alpha alliances. If I fail to present a suitable match, we'll be vulnerable to every predator in Virelion. My father will—" Her voice cracked. "It doesn't matter what he'll do. I just need someone to stand beside me for one night, that's all." The stranger studied her for a long moment, golden eyes reflecting torchlight in a way that seemed almost luminous. Then he stood, extending his hand to help her up. "I'll do it," he said simply, "on one condition." Bianca's heart lurched. "What condition?" "You tell me the truth if I ask for it. No more half-stories." His gaze held hers, steady and impossibly calm. "And you trust that I won't let anyone harm you." It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a vow. "I don't even know your name," Bianca whispered. Something flickered across his expression, too quick to read. "You will, when it matters." They moved through the ember market like shadows, the stranger leading her away from the tavern, where Jessie's betrayal still burned in her chest. Bianca kept her hood low, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement in the crowded streets. The Council of Moons was tomorrow. She had less than 24 hours to— "Where are we going?" she asked as they turned down a narrower street leading toward the city outskirts. "Somewhere you can breathe," he said, without looking back. The market district gave way to residential neighborhoods, then to the rougher edges of the lower city, where torchlight grew sparse. Bianca's dress caught on loose stones. Her soft leather boots, made for estate corridors and ballrooms, weren't designed for this kind of travel. They were passing a darkened alley when 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Pack enforcers. Bianca recognized the silver badges at their belts, the confident swagger of men who enforced alpha law in the lower territories. All 3 reeked of cheap ale and entitlement. "Well, well," the largest one drawled, blocking their path. "What do we have here? Pretty lady out past curfew without pack escort. That's a violation of territorial law, sweetheart." Bianca's blood went cold. She'd heard stories about what happened to unprotected women who crossed paths with enforcers after dark. The stranger stepped forward, not aggressive, just deliberate, positioning himself between Bianca and the 3 men with an economy of movement that seemed almost casual. "She's with me," he said quietly. The lead enforcer laughed. "With you? And who the hell are—" He stopped mid-sentence. Something had changed in the air. A pressure Bianca couldn't name but could feel pressing against her skin, like the moment before lightning strikes. The stranger hadn't moved, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't done anything visible. But all 3 enforcers had gone rigid, their eyes wide, their hands dropping away from their weapons. "We didn't," the leader stammered, suddenly pale. "We didn't realize—" "Leave," the stranger said. Just one word. Barely above a whisper. They ran. Bianca stared at the empty street, where 3 armed men had been standing seconds before. What just happened? They remembered they had somewhere else to be. The stranger turned back to her, and his expression was calm again, controlled, as if he hadn't just sent 3 pack enforcers fleeing with a single word. "Can you walk? We need to get beyond the city walls before dawn." She nodded numbly and followed. They walked in silence for another half-hour, leaving the city behind. The road became dirt, then grass. Bianca's ankle twisted on uneven ground, and she gasped, stumbling. The stranger caught her before she fell. "Let me see," he said, already kneeling before she could protest. Bianca's breath caught as he carefully unlaced her boot, his hands gentle despite their obvious strength. He examined her ankle with the focus of someone who knew exactly what he was looking for, fingers probing the swelling with practiced care. "Not broken," he murmured, "but you can't walk on it like this." Without asking permission, he produced a strip of cloth from his pack and wrapped her ankle with expert precision, firm enough to support, but not tight enough to cut circulation. "Better?" Bianca stared down at him, this stranger who knelt in the dirt to tend her injury, who had defended her without hesitation, who treated her comfort like it mattered more than his own pride. Jessie had never knelt for her, had never asked if she was comfortable, if she needed rest, if she was afraid. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you." His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding too fragile to name. "We'll camp here tonight," he said, rising. "The council isn't until tomorrow evening. You need rest." He built a fire with efficiency that spoke of long practice, then offered her his cloak without a word. Bianca wrapped herself in it, breathing in the scent of leather and something wild she couldn't identify. Above them, the moon climbed higher, full and silver, casting everything in ethereal light. Bianca watched the stranger across the fire, the way shadows played across his face, the way he watched the darkness, like he could see things she couldn't. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because you asked. Because you chose to ask." Sleep came slowly, but when it did, Bianca dreamed of golden eyes watching over her. And in the dream, she felt something ancient and powerful studying her with interest that felt almost like recognition, as if the moon itself had taken notice of her choice. Dawn broke cold and pale over the grasslands beyond the city walls. Bianca woke to find the stranger already awake, tending the fire with the same quiet efficiency he brought to everything. Her ankle throbbed dully, but the swelling had gone down. "We should talk about what happens at the council," he said without preamble, handing her a water skin. "What you're walking into." Bianca accepted it gratefully, her throat dry. "I know what the council is. Noble families gathering to—" "No." His voice was gentle but firm. "You know what your father told you. That's not the same thing." He settled across from her, firelight catching in his eyes. "The Council of Moons isn't a social gathering, Bianca. It's a display of pack hierarchy. Every alpha in the Northern Territories will be there, measuring strength, identifying weakness, deciding who deserves protection and who gets devoured." The way he said it made her skin prickle. "How do you know so much about it?" He ignored the question. "In Virelion, marriage isn't about love or even compatibility. It's about alliance. When you present a husband at the council, you're not introducing a partner. You're declaring which pack now has claim to Housecal's resources, which alpha your father has chosen to protect you." Bianca's hands tightened around the water skin. "My father hasn't chosen anyone. That's the problem. He's been so focused on negotiating the best political advantage that he's run out of time. So I'm supposed to arrive with someone, anyone, who looks strong enough to make other alphas think twice about challenging us. And if you don't, then Housecal becomes prey." She said it flatly, without emotion, because she'd lived with this reality her entire life. "We have gold, but no pack ties, no alpha protection. We're vulnerable. Other noble families will circle us like wolves around wounded deer, looking for opportunities to absorb our assets, marry into our wealth, or simply destroy us to eliminate competition." The stranger's expression remained neutral, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "You were raised for this," he said quietly. Not a question. Bianca laughed once, bitter. "I was groomed for it. From the moment I could walk, my father made sure I understood my purpose. I wasn't his daughter. I was his most valuable contract, to be negotiated carefully, leveraged strategically, and eventually sold to the highest bidder." She stared into the fire, memories rising like smoke. "My mother tried to protect me from it. She used to tell me stories about choosing your own path, about love mattering more than power. She died when I was 12. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was weak." The words came out harsher than Bianca intended, echoing her father's voice. She closed her eyes. That's what he said at her funeral, that she was too soft for this world. That sentiment was a luxury we couldn't afford. He started my training the next day. Etiquette, politics, strategy. How to smile when your stomach churned. How to make men feel powerful while extracting concessions. How to be exactly what someone else needed so they'd pay the highest price. "That's not training," the stranger said, and there was something dark in his voice now. "That's conditioning." Bianca met his gaze. "It's survival. In Verelion, women like me don't get choices. We get transactions." "Is that what you believe?" He leaned forward slightly. "That you're nothing more than currency?" The question hit harder than it should have. Bianca's throat tightened. "I believed—" She stopped, gathering courage. "I believed Jesse was different, that he saw me as more than my father's investment, that maybe love could be real if you were brave enough to choose it." She laughed again, the sound broken. "I was wrong. He was just another man trying to profit from me." At least he was honest about the transaction, once he thought I couldn't hear. The stranger was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "The council will challenge you. They'll ask questions about your husband, where you met, how long you've known each other, why they should recognize this bond. They'll look for weakness." "And you think you can handle that?" Bianca asked. "Pretend to be my husband convincingly enough to fool every alpha in the Northern Territories." His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "I understand the council better than you know. I've seen its politics, its power plays, its hierarchies. I know which alphas respect strength and which ones only understand dominance. I know how they think." There was something in the way he said it that made Bianca pause. "You're not just familiar with pack politics. You're part of them, aren't you?" He didn't answer directly. "What I am doesn't matter right now. What matters is that when we walk into that council tomorrow night, no one will question your right to be there. No one will see you as prey. Because you'll be standing beside me." "Yes." Bianca studied him across the fire. This stranger who had appeared exactly when she needed him, who moved through the world with quiet authority, who knew too much about alpha lore and pack hierarchies to be a simple mercenary. "I don't believe in love anymore," she said suddenly. "I don't believe in rescue or fairy tales or men who keep their promises. I believe in survival, in making the best choice available when all your options are terrible." She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. "Is that wrong?" "No." His answer was immediate, certain. "It's honest." Something in his tone made her chest ache. He wasn't pitying her, wasn't trying to convince her she was wrong or broken or too damaged to deserve better. He was simply listening, accepting her truth without trying to fix it. And that terrified her more than anything else, because she was starting to feel safe with him, starting to trust that when he said he'd protect her, he meant it, starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this transaction could be different. That night, as the fire burned low and the stranger kept watch, Bianca drifted into uneasy sleep. She dreamed of golden eyes again, but this time they weren't just watching. They were beckoning, pulling her toward something vast and ancient and utterly beyond her understanding. The moon hung impossibly large above her, marked with silver light that pulsed like a heartbeat. And in the dream, she heard a voice that sounded like thunder and velvet combined. "You've already chosen, Bianca Cal. Now you just have to accept what that choice means." She woke with a gasp to find genuine moonlight streaming down, fuller and brighter than it should be. The stranger sat across from her, silhouetted against silver light, his eyes reflecting the moon with an intensity that didn't seem quite human. and Bianca realized that whatever she'd stumbled into when she collided with him in that dark alley, it was far more than a simple transaction. Morning came too quickly. Bianca woke with the dream still clinging to her skin. Golden eyes, silver moonlight, a voice that had spoken directly into her soul. She sat up, disoriented, to find the stranger watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're hiding something," she said without preamble. Her ankle felt better, the swelling nearly gone. "Last night, the way you talked about the council, about Alpha Law, you're not just familiar with it, you're part of it." He didn't deny it. "Yes." "And the enforcers who ran, they recognized you." "Yes." Bianca's heart hammered against her ribs. "So when we walk into the council tonight and I present you as my husband, what exactly am I walking into?" The stranger rose, moving to stand at the edge of their camp, where dawn light caught in his hair. For a long moment, he was silent. Then, "There's something you need to understand about Verelion's laws. Marriage, the kind your father arranged for you, the kind noble families negotiate, that's surface politics. Legal contracts that can be broken, dissolved, renegotiated. I know that. But there's something older." He turned to face her, and his eyes held that unnatural luminescence again. "Something that predates noble bloodlines and territorial treaties. The Alphas call it the claim. It's a bond that exists beyond law, beyond politics. When an Alpha claims someone, it's recognized by every pack in Verelion as absolute, unbreakable." Bianca's mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you want protection, that no Alpha at the council can challenge, if you want your father's enemies to look at you and see someone untouchable, a marriage contract won't be enough." He took a step toward her. "But a claim would be." The word hung between them like a blade. "A claim," Bianca repeated slowly. "You're talking about an Alpha bond?" "Yes. Which means you're—" The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The way he'd sent enforcers fleeing with a word. The way he moved through the world with absolute certainty. The way even the moon seemed to respond to his presence. "You're an Alpha?" "Yes." Bianca stood on shaking legs, her mind racing. "And you want to claim me?" "I want to offer you the choice." His voice remained steady, patient. "A claim would protect you in ways a simple marriage contract never could. No one at the council would dare challenge it. Your father's position would be secure. You would be untouchable." "And what would it cost me?" Bianca's voice cracked. "What would I lose?" He met her eyes directly. "A claim creates a bond. You'd feel my emotions, sense my presence. I would be able to find you anywhere. And you would be bound to me in ways that—" He paused. "In ways you don't fully understand yet." "Bound." The word tasted like ash. "You mean owned?" "No." The force in his voice surprised her. "A claim isn't ownership. It's connection. But it is permanent, Bianca. Once formed, it cannot be undone." She thought of Jessie's laughter echoing in the dark. Poor girl actually thinks I love her. She thought of her father's cold calculations, measuring her worth in political advantage. She thought of every moment in her life when someone else had decided what she was worth, what she deserved, who she belonged to. "You're asking me to give up my freedom," she whispered. "I'm asking you to choose your own protection." He took another step closer. "But I won't force this. If you want to walk into the council with just a marriage pretense, I'll stand beside you and play the role. It will be riskier, but it's your choice." "Why?" Bianca demanded. "Why offer me this? What do you gain?" Something vulnerable flickered across his features. Maybe I'm tired of people having no choice in who protects them. Bianca counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3, trying to think clearly through the panic. A claim would protect her, would make her untouchable, would give her the safety she'd never had. But it would also bind her to a stranger, whose name she still didn't know. If I agree, she said slowly, I need to understand something. This bond, would you be able to control me? Force me to obey? No. A claim doesn't work that way. It's not domination, it's recognition. I would feel your emotions, yes. I would know if you were in danger. But your will remains your own. And if I wanted to leave, after the council? Pain crossed his expression, quickly hidden. I wouldn't stop you. The bond would remain, but you'd be free to go wherever you chose. Bianca closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed that this was insane, that binding herself to an alpha she'd known for less than a day was madness, that she'd just be trading one cage for another. But when she opened her eyes and looked at him, she saw something she'd never seen in Jesse's face, or her father's: respect for her agency. He wasn't demanding, wasn't manipulating, was simply offering, and genuinely willing to accept her refusal. I won't be owned again, she said, her voice stronger now. Not by you, not by anyone, but I will choose. I will choose protection. I will choose safety. I will choose to trust you until you give me a reason not to. The stranger's eyes widened slightly. Bianca, do it, she said. Claim me. But understand this. I'm choosing you. Not because I have no other options, but because for the first time in my life, someone is letting me choose. He moved then, closing the distance between them with deliberate slowness, giving her time to change her mind. When he stood before her, he extended his hand palm up. This will hurt, he warned, but I'll make it as quick as I can. Bianca placed her hand in his. The world ignited. Pain lanced up her arm, not the pain of injury, but of connection, like lightning finding ground. Silver light erupted between their palms, spreading up both their arms in patterns that looked almost like script. Heat flooded through Bianca's chest, stealing her breath, making her bones ache with the weight of something ancient, forcing itself into existence. She gasped, knees buckling, but he caught her, held her steady, while the bond seared itself into reality. And then she felt him, not just his physical presence, but his emotions, his essence, felt his fierce protectiveness, his loneliness, his strange tenderness toward her, felt the way he'd been watching her, not with possession, but with something closer to wonder. When the light faded, they stood together, breathing hard, still holding hands. It's done, he said quietly. Bianca looked down at her arm, where silver marks faded slowly beneath her skin, leaving only warmth behind. She could still feel him, a presence at the edge of her awareness, steady as a heartbeat. She should feel trapped, terrified, should regret this irreversible choice. But strangely, all she felt was safe. I still don't know your name, she whispered. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. You will. Tonight, when it matters. The council hall rose against the night sky, like a monument to power. All stone and silver banners, torches burning with flames that seemed to reflect the full moon hanging overhead. Carriages lined the courtyard, each bearing the crests of noble houses and pack territories. Bianca could hear music drifting from inside, conversation, laughter, the sound of people who belonged. She straightened her shoulders, adjusted the deep blue gown they'd purchased in a border town that afternoon, and felt the bond pulse warm beneath her skin. He was beside her, steady, certain, radiating a presence that made nobles turn and stare as they approached. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Bianca thought of every moment that had led here. Her mother's death, her father's cold contracts, Jesse's betrayal, the desperate collision in a dark alley, the claim burning silver between their hands. "Yes," she said, and meant it. They entered together. The great hall fell silent in waves as they walked through the massive doors. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them, noble families in their finest dress, alphas marked by the authority they carried like crowns, political advisors whispering behind jeweled hands. Bianca kept her chin high, her steps measured. She felt different than she had 2 days ago. The woman who'd fled her father's estate in terror seemed like a stranger. This woman, the one walking into the Council of Moons with an alpha's claim burning beneath her skin, this woman was someone new. "Bianca," her father's voice cut through the whispers. Lord Cedric Cal pushed through the crowd, his face mottled with fury. "Where in the 7 hells have you been? Do you have any idea?" He stopped abruptly, his eyes landing on the stranger beside her. Every alpha in the room had gone still. "Father." Bianca's voice came out colder than she'd intended. "I've arrived as commanded, with my husband as required by council law." "Your husband?" Lord Cedric's face contorted. "What husband? Who is this man? I authorized no marriage contract, no negotiation." "Perhaps," a smooth voice interrupted from the raised dais, "introductions are in order." Alpha Dorian Blackmere, head of the council, regarded them with calculating interest. "Lady Bianca Cal, you were summoned to present your betrothed for council recognition. Instead, you arrive with a stranger and claim marriage. This requires explanation." The crowd pressed closer, hungry for scandal. Bianca felt the stranger's hand settle lightly at the small of her back. Not controlling, just present. Supportive. "My daughter," Lord Cedric began, voice tight with barely controlled rage, "has clearly made an impulsive decision without proper counsel. Whatever arrangement she's entered can be dissolved, renegotiated." "No." Bianca's voice rang clear through the hall. "It cannot." Alpha Dorian leaned forward. "And why is that, Lady Bianca?" She met his gaze steadily. "Because this isn't a marriage contract, Alpha Dorian. It's a claim." The shockwave was immediate. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several alphas rose from their seats, their attention fixed not on Bianca, but on the man beside her with sudden, electric intensity. "A claim?" Lord Cedric's voice rose to a near shout. "That's impossible. No alpha would claim you without negotiating with me first, without proper." He turned on the stranger, drawing himself up to his full height. "Who are you to dare?" The stranger stepped forward. The temperature in the room dropped. Every alpha present straightened, their instincts responding to something Bianca could feel through the bond now. Raw, absolute authority radiating from him, like heat from a forge. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the massive hall without strain. "Caelan Thorne," he said simply, "Alpha King of the Northern Territories." The silence that followed was absolute. Bianca's heart stopped. Alpha King, the ruler of all northern packs, the most powerful alpha in Virelion. The man whose name alone could shift political alliances and end bloodlines. She had claimed the Alpha King, or rather, he had claimed her. The crowd erupted. Nobles surged forward, voices rising in shock and speculation. Several lesser alphas actually bowed. Lord Cedric stood frozen, his face cycling through disbelief, calculation, and barely suppressed rage. Alpha Dorian remained seated, but his expression had shifted to something between respect and wariness. "Alpha King Kalen, we had no notice of your attendance, nor of your involvement with House Cal. I require no permission to attend the council I established," Kalen said mildly. "As for my claim, it is my right to choose my mate without explanation or approval." "Your mate?" Lord Cedric found his voice again, though it shook. "My daughter is your mate." "By her choice," Kalen said, and there was steel beneath the calm now. "Bianca Cal chose me when she had every reason to trust no one. I chose her in return." Movement at the hall's entrance drew attention. Guards entered, dragging a figure between them, a man with sandy hair and expensive clothes now rumpled from confinement. "Jesse." Bianca's breath caught. Through the bond, she felt Kalen's immediate response. Protective fury barely leashed. "We found this one trying to flee the city," one of the guards reported. "He matches the description of the man who was negotiating false marriage contracts with several noble houses, including House Cal." Jesse's eyes found Bianca's across the hall. For one moment, she saw recognition there, and fear. All the air left her lungs. Rage rose hot and vicious in her throat. Tangled with grief for the girl she'd been, the one who'd believed his lies. Vindication burned alongside the fury, because here was proof, public, undeniable proof, that she'd been right to run. But underneath it all was something darker. The knowledge that she'd almost traded one cage for another, that Jesse would have taken everything and left her with nothing. Lord Cedric was speaking rapidly now, his voice rising. "This is clearly some misunderstanding. My daughter is confused, manipulated. She couldn't possibly have understood what accepting an alpha claim meant. The bond should be dissolved until proper negotiations." "There will be no dissolution." Kalen's voice cracked like a whip. "No negotiation, no renegotiation. Bianca Cal is my claimed mate, recognized by every law in Verelion, and anyone who challenges that challenges me personally." Lord Cedric's face darkened to purple. "You dare. She is my daughter, my property to negotiate." "I am no one's property." Bianca's voice surprised even her with its strength. "Not yours, father. Not his. I made my choice." Her father moved then, surging forward with fury contorting his features, his hand rising as if to strike her the way he had 100 times in her childhood, when she'd dared to question his authority. Kalen's roar shook the hall. Lord Cedric's hand never made contact. Kalen moved faster than sight, catching the older man's wrist mid-swing, his grip iron and absolute. The roar that tore from his throat was not human. It was primal, ancient, the sound of an alpha protecting his mate from threat. The force of it drove every person in the hall back a step. Glasses shattered, torches flickered. Several lesser wolves dropped to their knees involuntarily, their instincts overriding pride. "No one," Kalen said, his voice resonating with power that made the air vibrate, "touches my mate." Lord Cedric's face went white. His wrist bones creaked under the pressure of Kalen's grip. Around them, the council had erupted into chaos. Some nobles backing away, others pressing forward to see. Alphas rising from their seats with predatory interest. Alpha Dorian slammed his staff against the floor. "Order! There will be order in this hall." Kalen released Lord Cedric, with enough force to send him stumbling backward. The older man caught himself, cradling his wrist, his eyes wide with something Bianca had never seen there before. Fear. "Alpha King Kalen," Dorian's voice was measured but firm. "Lord Cedric's actions were inappropriate, but violence in the council hall, Was his, Kaelin interrupted, still radiating barely controlled fury. He attempted to strike his daughter in front of witnesses, in front of the entire council, because she dared to claim agency over her own life. "She's my daughter." Lord Cedric found his voice again, though it shook. "I have the right to discipline. You have no rights over her anymore." Kaelin's golden eyes blazed. "She is claimed. That supersedes every bond of blood, every noble custom, every contract you ever imagined negotiating. She belongs to herself, and she chose me." One of the council guards cleared his throat. "Alpha King, if I may, this man we apprehended has information relevant to House Cal's situation." All eyes turned to Jesse, still restrained between two guards. His expensive clothes were rumpled, his face pale with terror as he took in the scene before him. Bianca standing beside the Alpha King, the silver claim mark visible at her wrist, the entire council watching. "Well?" Alpha Dorian demanded. "Speak." Jesse's eyes darted to Bianca, then away. I don't know what they're talking about." Kaelin took one step toward him. The casual movement somehow contained more threat than Lord Cedric's attempted violence. Alpha power rolled off Kaelin in waves, and Jesse's knees buckled. "The truth," Kaelin said quietly. "Now." The words carried weight beyond sound, a command backed by absolute authority. Bianca felt it through the bond, the terrible force of an Alpha King's will focused like a blade. Jesse crumbled. "I was paid." The words tumbled out in a rush. "Lord Cedric paid me to court his daughter, to make her believe I loved her, to keep her compliant until he could finalize a marriage contract with Lord Bartholomew." He was shaking now, the truth pouring out under the pressure of Kaelin's presence. "But then, I realized she'd bring gold with her when she ran, her dowry, her inheritance. So I told her I'd help her escape, took everything she had, and planned to disappear before anyone noticed." The hall exploded with whispers. Several noble families turned to stare at Lord Cedric with open disgust. Bianca felt the words hit her chest like physical blows. Her father had paid Jesse, had orchestrated even her secret rebellion, her desperate hope for love. Every moment she'd believed was real had been calculated, purchased, performed. "Is this true?" Alpha Dorian's voice cut through the noise, directed at Lord Cedric. Her father's face cycled through expressions, rage, calculation, defiance. Finally, "I did what was necessary to secure my house's future. My daughter was rebellious, impulsive. She needed to be managed until proper arrangements could be made." "Managed?" Bianca repeated, her voice hollow, "like livestock." "You were being difficult," Lord Cedric snapped, "refusing every suitable match, dreaming about romantic nonsense. Someone had to think practically about House Cal's survival." Bianca stepped forward, and she felt the bond pulse warm. Kaelin's support without interference, his presence giving her strength without taking her voice. "You're right," she said clearly. "I refused every match you proposed, because every single one was about your advancement. Your wealth, your power. Never about me. Never about what I wanted or needed or deserved." Her hands clenched at her sides. "You treated me like currency my entire life. Mother tried to teach me I was more than that, and you called her weak for it. You've manipulated every choice I tried to make, every path I tried to walk." "I was protecting you," Lord Cedric's voice rose, "teaching you how this world works. You were teaching me that I had no value beyond what men decided I was worth." Bianca's voice cracked, but didn't break. "Well, I made a choice. For the first time in my life, a man gave me agency instead of taking it away. He offered protection without demanding ownership. He let me choose. She turned to face the assembled council, her chin high despite the trembling in her limbs. I am claimed by Alpha King Kaelin Thorne. Not because my father negotiated it, not because I had no other options, but because when I was desperate and alone and betrayed, he asked me what I needed instead of telling me what I owed. Her voice rang through the hall. I chose him, and I will not be owned, not by my father, not by contracts, not by anyone who believes I exist for their convenience. Silence fell. Then Kaelin did something that shocked every person present. He knelt. The Alpha King, ruler of all northern territories, the most powerful wolf in Verelion, knelt before Bianca in front of the entire council. Bianca Cal chose me when she had nothing, he said, his voice carrying despite his position. When she had every reason to trust no one. She gave me something I've never had in all my years of ruling. She gave me her genuine choice, not political calculation. Not strategic alliance, just choice. He looked up at her, golden eyes fierce with emotion. I choose her in return, with everything I am, and anyone who questions her right to stand beside me can challenge me directly. No one moved. Alpha Dorian stood slowly. The claim is recognized. House Cal's position is secured through its connection to the Alpha King. This council has no grounds to challenge it. Around them, alliances shifted visibly. Nobles who had been whispering about House Cal's weakness now watched Bianca with wary respect. Her father stood isolated, his authority crumbling. Bianca looked down at Kaelin, still kneeling, offering her his hand. She took it. He rose, and together they faced the council. Power. She had it now, more than she'd ever imagined possible. Enough to reshape her father's house, to protect herself, to command respect from people who'd seen her as nothing but a bargaining chip. And it terrified her almost as much as freedom did. Because now she had to figure out what to do with it. The council's judgment came swiftly. Jesse Hunter was sentenced to exile beyond Verelion's borders, stripped of any claims to noble association, his name recorded in the council's records as a fraudster and manipulator. He was dragged from the hall, still protesting, still making excuses, his voice fading into the night. Bianca watched him go and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, just a hollow absence where her illusions had been. Lord Cedric's reckoning was more complex. House Cal would remain, but under new leadership, Bianca's leadership, as claimed mate to the Alpha King. Her father's authority was stripped. His assets frozen pending review of his financial dealings. Several contracts he'd negotiated were declared void due to evidence of coercion and manipulation. The council will reconvene tomorrow to discuss restructuring, Alpha Dorian announced. Lady Bianca, as Queen Consort to the Alpha King, will represent House Cal's interests going forward. Queen Consort. The title landed on Bianca's shoulders like a physical weight. As the hall emptied, nobles offering careful congratulations and calculated alliances, Bianca found herself alone in an antechamber with her father. Kaelin had given them space, but remained close enough that she could feel him through the bond, present, protective, but allowing her this confrontation. Lord Cedric stood by the window, his back rigid, cradling his injured wrist. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You've destroyed everything I built," he said finally, his voice flat. "No." Bianca's response was quiet, but firm. "You destroyed it yourself when you decided your daughter was merchandise." He turned to face her, and for the first time in her memory, he looked old. I was protecting you, teaching you survival. You were teaching me that I had no value beyond what others assigned me. Bianca counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3, finding calm in the familiar rhythm. Mother tried to teach me differently, that I deserved to be chosen, not purchased. You called her weak for that. She was weak. This world devours the weak. And yet I'm standing here, and you're not. Bianca met his gaze steadily. I made choices you never believed I was capable of making. I survived betrayal you orchestrated. I found protection you couldn't negotiate. Not because I was strong in the way you defined strength, but because I was willing to choose for myself. Lord Cedric's jaw tightened. You think that Alpha King chose you for anything other than political advantage? You're more naive than I thought. The words were designed to wound. A month ago they would have. Maybe, Bianca said softly, maybe I am naive. Maybe this will all crumble eventually. But at least it will be my choice to make, my risk to take, my life to live. She moved toward the door, then paused. I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will, but I release you from any claim over my future. You taught me survival. I'll give you that much. Now I'm going to learn to live. She left him standing there and didn't look back. Kaelin found her on a balcony, overlooking the council grounds, her hands gripping the stone railing tight enough to hurt. I don't know how to be a queen, Bianca said without turning. I don't know how to lead House Cal, or navigate alpha politics, or any of this. I was raised to be traded, not to rule. He came to stand beside her, close but not touching. You navigated the last 3 days better than most trained politicians would have. I ran away and collided with a stranger in the dark. Her laugh was bitter. That's not strategy, that's panic. You chose to ask for help instead of accepting defeat. You chose to trust when you had every reason not to. You chose to claim your own agency when it would have been easier to let others decide for you. Kaelin's voice was gentle. That's not panic, Bianca. That's courage. She finally looked at him. This man who'd appeared exactly when she needed him. Who'd offered protection without possession. Who'd knelt before an entire council to honor her choice. Why did you really help me? She asked. The truth this time. Kaelin was quiet for a long moment, golden eyes reflecting moonlight. When he spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability she'd never heard there before. I've been Alpha King for longer than you've been alive. I've had power, authority, respect. Everything a ruler could want. He gripped the railing beside her hands. But no one has ever chosen me, Bianca. Every alliance I've made has been strategic. Every relationship calculated. People bow to my authority, fear my power, want what I can give them. But no one has ever looked at me and simply chosen me for who I am beneath the title. Bianca's breath caught. When you asked me to be your +1 in that alley, you didn't know who I was. You just saw someone you thought might help. A small, sad smile touched his lips. For the first time in centuries, someone chose me without knowing what they'd gain from it. And when I offered you the claim, you chose me again, not because I was the Alpha King, but because I'd treated you like your choices mattered. I did know, Bianca admitted quietly, not consciously, but I felt it, the power in you, the authority. Some part of me recognized what you were. And you chose me anyway. I chose you anyway. They stood in silence, the bond between them humming with emotions too complex to name. Affection, Bianca realized. That's what she felt through the connection. his genuine affection for her, not as a political asset or a beautiful prize, but as the person who'd stumbled into his life and asked him to stand beside her. "I'm terrified," she whispered, "of this power, of this responsibility, of failing everyone who's now depending on me." "So am I," Kaylin said. "I'm terrified that you'll realize you chose wrong, that I'll fail to protect you the way you deserve, that this bond I've wanted for so long will become a cage you grow to resent." Bianca turned fully toward him. "Then we'll be terrified together." He smiled, genuinely smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. Together. When the council reconvened the next morning, Bianca walked into the hall with her shoulders straight and her head high. She wore the formal robes of House Cal, modified with silver threading that marked her status as Queen Consort. Kaylin walked beside her, but slightly behind, a public statement that she was leading her house, not being led. Alpha Dorian regarded her with something approaching respect. "Lady Bianca Cal, Queen Consort. House Cal's restructuring awaits your direction." Bianca took a breath, counted 1, 2, 3, and spoke with a voice that surprised her with its steadiness. "House Cal will no longer negotiate marriages as political contracts. Any alliances we form will be based on mutual benefit and genuine consent, or they will not be formed at all." She met the eyes of the assembled nobles and alphas. "I was raised as currency. I will not perpetuate that system. If that costs us political power, so be it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others scandalized. Bianca didn't flinch. She'd made her choice. Now she would live with it. The Alpha King's court was nothing like Bianca had imagined. She'd expected cold stone halls and rigid hierarchy, warriors posturing for dominance, the constant threat of violence lurking beneath political civility. What she found instead was something far more complex. A web of loyalties and rivalries, ancient pack dynamics intersecting with modern politics, and a council of advisors who watched her with varying degrees of skepticism and curiosity. "They're waiting for you to fail," Kaylin told her during her second week at court, when she'd spent 3 hours mediating a territorial dispute between two lesser alphas. "Not maliciously. They just don't know what to make of a queen consort who wasn't born into pack politics." "Good," Bianca said, reviewing the agreement she'd drafted. "Low expectations are easier to exceed." She learned quickly that dominance wasn't her tool. Intelligence was. When Alpha Marcus challenged her authority over a trade route decision, she didn't try to outroar him. Instead, she presented detailed shipping records, weather patterns, and economic projections that made her position irrefutable. He'd grudgingly conceded, and by the next council meeting, he was asking her opinion on his own territory's commerce. When the Southern Packs questioned her restructuring of House Cal, she invited their representatives to witness the changes firsthand, showed them the new contracts that protected both parties, the economic benefits of consent-based alliances, the stability that came from genuine cooperation rather than coerced agreements. One by one, they began to listen. Bianca noticed how Kaylin never intervened unless she asked. He attended councils but let her speak first, stood beside her but never overshadowed her. When pack leaders looked to him for confirmation of her decisions, he simply looked back at them until they addressed Bianca directly. "You're doing it again," she said one evening, as they reviewed proposals in his study. "Doing what?" He didn't look up from the document he was reading. "Deferring to me, making them treat me as an equal authority." She set down her own papers. "Why? You're the Alpha King. You could simply command their respect." "I could." He finally met her eyes. But you're earning it. That's worth more than any command I could give. Something warm unfurled in Bianca's chest. Not the bond, though she felt that constantly now. A steady presence like a second heartbeat. This was something else. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. The domestic moments surprised her most. She'd expected formality, distance, the careful space that political marriages required. Instead, she found Kaelin in the kitchens at dawn, coaxing Cook into making the honey cakes Bianca had mentioned, liking once in passing. Found him reading beside her fire in the evenings, content to share silence. Found him laughing, actually laughing, when she told him about Alpha Marcus's face during their trade route debate. "You terrified him with spreadsheets," Kaelin said, his whole body shaking with mirth. "The man has fought in 3 territorial wars, and you defeated him with economic projections. Numbers don't lie." But Bianca was laughing too, the sound surprising her with its ease. There were small touches, his hand at her back when she was tired, her fingers straightening his collar before councils, the way they'd begun to orbit each other naturally, drawn together by something beyond the bond. One night, after a particularly difficult negotiation that had left her drained, Kaelin found her on their private balcony. He didn't speak, just draped his cloak around her shoulders and stood beside her, solid and warm. "I thought being claimed would feel like a cage," Bianca said quietly, "like every other relationship I've known." "Does it?" She considered the question honestly. The bond hummed between them. She could feel his concern, his patience, his willingness to hear whatever truth she needed to speak. "No," she admitted. "It feels like partnership, like I'm stronger because you're here, not weaker. Like I can be myself instead of performing whatever role someone else needs." Kaelin's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing naturally. "That's what I wanted. What I've always wanted. For me, or for yourself. Both." He turned to face her fully. "I spent centuries being the Alpha King, the authority everyone obeyed but no one truly knew. With you, I get to be Kaelin. Just a man who's terrified of failing the woman who chose him." Bianca's throat tightened. "You haven't failed me. Yet." But he smiled as he said it. She reached up, touching his face, feeling the reality of him beneath her palm. "I don't think you understand. In all my life, no one has ever given me room to fail, to learn, to be imperfect. You do. Every day." His eyes closed briefly, and she felt his emotion through the bond. Gratitude, wonder, something achingly vulnerable. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered, the words terrifying and true. "Not because of the bond, not because you're the Alpha King, but because you see me, really see me, and you like what you see." When Kaelin kissed her, it wasn't the desperate collision of political arrangement or the calculated exchange of formal alliance. It was choice, affection, the beginning of something genuine. "I've been in love with you since you crashed into me with a pouch of gold and terror in your eyes," he murmured against her lips. "Since you chose to trust me when you had no reason to. Since you looked at the Alpha King and saw just a man who might help." They stood together in moonlight, the bond singing between them, no longer separate beings, but partners choosing each other daily. The coronation ceremony wasn't Bianca's idea, the council insisted. "A queen consort must be formally recognized," Alpha Dorian explained, "especially one who's restructuring centuries of tradition." The ceremony was held under the full moon, in the ancient coronation grounds where alphas had been crowned for generations. Bianca wore silver and blue, House Cal's colors merged with the white of the Alpha King's court. But when the moment came for Kaelin to place the crown on her head, the symbolic gesture of authority granted, he did something unexpected. He handed her the crown. "You earned this," he said clearly, loud enough for all assembled to hear. "Not through me, but through your own strength, intelligence, and courage. You don't need me to grant you authority. You claimed it yourself." Bianca took the crown with trembling hands. It was lighter than she expected, silver worked with moonstone that caught the light. She placed it on her own head. The assembled court erupted in acknowledgement, not the polite applause of political necessity, but genuine recognition. Kaelin took her hand, and together they faced the court. Not king and subject, not owner and owned, partners. "The Queen Consort has spoken," Kaelin announced, "and I, for one, intend to listen." Later, in the privacy of their chambers, Bianca set the crown aside and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the desperate girl who'd fled her father's estate, wasn't the broken thing Jesse's betrayal had created. She was someone new, someone chosen and choosing, someone learning that love didn't have to be a cage. It could be wings. Kaelin appeared in the reflection behind her. "No regrets?" he asked. Bianca thought of everything she'd lost, her illusions, her innocence, her belief that the world was anything other than complicated and difficult. Then she thought of everything she'd gained. "No regrets," she said, and meant it completely. The Council of Moons reconvened 6 months after Bianca had walked into that hall, beside a stranger, and changed everything. The great hall looked the same, stone and silver, torches burning, nobles in their finest dress. But the atmosphere had shifted. Where once there had been rigid hierarchy and unquestioned tradition, now there was something new, something that felt almost like possibility. Bianca stood before the assembled alphas and noble houses, the crown she'd placed on her own head, catching moonlight through the tall windows. Kaelin sat in the Alpha King's seat, but his attention, like everyone else's, was focused on her. "The Council recognizes Queen Consort Bianca Cal," Alpha Dorian announced formally, "who brings proposals for legislative reform." Bianca took a breath, counted 1, 2, 3, and spoke with a voice that no longer trembled. "For centuries, Virelion's noble families have treated marriages as transactions. Daughters and sons traded like commodities to secure alliances, with no consideration for consent, compatibility, or choice." She met the eyes of the assembled leaders steadily. "I propose new laws protecting the right of all individuals, regardless of house, rank, or pack affiliation, to refuse marriages they do not choose, to have agency over their own bonds, to be partners in alliances rather than property." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others resistant. "You're asking us to dismantle systems that have maintained stability for generations," one of the elder alphas challenged, "to prioritize individual choice over house security." "I'm asking us to build stronger foundations," Bianca countered. "Alliances based on genuine cooperation are more stable than those built on coercion. People who choose their bonds fight harder to protect them." She gestured to the detailed proposals her advisors had prepared. "These reforms don't eliminate strategic marriages. They simply require that both parties consent freely, that no one is forced, manipulated, or sold into bonds they don't want." Another alpha spoke up. "And if houses refuse to adapt? If they continue the old practices? Then they will find themselves without the protection and trade agreements that houses who adopt these reforms will offer each other." Bianca's voice was firm. "Change is coming whether we legislate it or not. The question is whether we lead it or get swept away by it. The debate lasted hours, but when the vote came, the reforms passed, not unanimously, but with enough support to become law. Bianca had changed Virelion, not through dominance or force, but through intelligence, compassion, and the simple revolutionary act of believing people deserved choices. That evening, the court held a celebration. Music filled the halls, wine flowed freely, and nobles who had once whispered about the merchant daughter turned queen now sought her counsel and approval. Bianca slipped away to her favorite balcony, needing a moment of quiet after the chaos of the day. The moon hung full and bright overhead, the same moon that had witnessed her desperate flight from her father's estate, her collision with a stranger, her choice to claim and be claimed. She heard Kalen before she saw him, felt him through the bond, warm and steady as always. "Hiding from your own celebration?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Savoring it," she corrected. "There's a difference." He smiled, and she still marveled at how freely he smiled now, how much lighter he seemed than the controlled stranger who'd gathered her spilled coins in a dark alley. "You've changed the world today," Kalen said. "Do you realize that? Centuries of tradition reformed because one woman refused to accept that she was property. One woman who had help." Bianca turned to face him fully. "You could have refused me that night, could have walked away from a desperate stranger with a pouch of gold and impossible requests. But you didn't." "I couldn't." His hand found hers naturally. "The moment you asked me to stand beside you, I knew. Some part of me recognized that you were about to change everything, starting with me." Through the bond, Bianca felt the depth of his emotion. Not just love, though that was there, constant and fierce, but also gratitude, wonder, the joy of being chosen daily by someone who saw all of him and stayed anyway. "The claim wasn't a cage," she said softly. "I know that now. It was freedom, the freedom to be myself without fear, because I'd finally found someone who valued my agency more than my compliance." Kalen pulled her closer, and she went willingly, fitting against him like she'd been designed for this exact place. "I spent so long being what everyone needed me to be," Bianca continued. "My father's investment, Jesse's mark, House Cal's salvation. I thought I needed a +1, someone to stand beside me so I could survive the council, but that's not what I needed at all." "What did you need?" Kalen asked, though she could feel through the bond that he already knew the answer. Bianca looked up at him. This man who'd given her protection without possession, partnership without domination, love without conditions. "I needed someone who would never let me stand alone," she said. "Someone who saw me trying to survive and offered me a chance to live instead. Someone who understood that being beside me didn't mean standing in front of me or behind me, but truly beside me. Equal, partner, choice." Kalen's arms tightened around her. "Always." They stood together in the moonlight, the bond humming between them like a song. Around them, the celebration continued, the court honoring the woman who'd walked into their world with nothing but desperation and gold, and changed everything through the simple, revolutionary act of choosing herself. Bianca had spent her whole life being told what she was worth, who she belonged to, what her purpose was. She'd been groomed as currency, betrayed by manufactured love, nearly traded away to secure someone else's future. But she'd run. She'd chosen. She'd collided with a stranger in the darkness and asked for help when asking felt like weakness. And she'd discovered that she was never as powerless as they'd tried to make her believe. The moon watched over them, silver and eternal, bearing witness to a love that had begun with desperation and grown into something neither of them had known they were capable of. Genuine partnership, freely chosen, fiercely protected. Bianca Cal, Queen Consort of the Northern Territories, stood unafraid in the moonlight, her hand in her husband's, her crown earned rather than granted, her future finally her own. She never needed a +1. She needed someone who would never let her stand alone, and in choosing him, she'd finally learned to choose herself. The end. If this moonlit love story stirred your heart, subscribe and let me know. Your voice decides which destiny unfolds next.